I'm so
Hi.
glad it worked.
It did. Usually it's like the third trial, but yes, hi.
Happy Saturday.
You too.
I don't know about you, but I'm very happy it's the weekend.
I know, me too.
I'm excited to chat.
Yes, me too. And I see more people are joining. We
Yeah,
are here to talk about our MS journey, right?
Mhm. Yes. I've
So,
actually not shared a whole lot. I mean, I've shared some on my Instagram, but never done a live. So this is going to be fun.
is it?
We'll see.
I mean, talking about MS is general, it's not fun, but yeah, I'm trying to make it fun every day. I think that's
Sure.
so last year you were diagnosed with cyst, right?
Yes. So I was diagnosed last June, so June 2023. So almost exactly, we're coming up on a year.
How did you take it as a doctor?
Um, I think in some ways it might have been a little bit easier because I knew about MS. My mother-in-law also has MS. And so that was, I think, made it a lot more challenging. But I also specialize in pediatrics. And so I am, I wasn't fully in the MS world. I didn't have all the knowledge compared to some of my other colleagues who treat a lot of MS. And so I think it was really challenging. I think it was really challenging, especially as a naturopathic doctor, to come to grips with, I felt like I was doing everything right. Right? I was already eating a really healthy diet. I was working out. I would say have basically zero toxins in our whole house. I was already doing a lot. And so I think there was a lot of grief around how the heck did this happen? Was really my thought. But when I
Did you
got
find
diagnosed,
any answers? Did you find any answers? Because for me, I know that was the first thing. I was like, why?
definitely, yeah. So I got diagnosed on a Friday, and on Monday, I told myself I had a feeling that I was going to get diagnosed on that Friday. When I went in, I kind of had already like mentally prepared myself because I had seen a previous provider. It was like a step to get into the neurologist, and she basically like pushed my case to the top. And so within a week, I was seeing the neurologist because she was so concerned about my case. And so I already knew, I think like intuitively, that I was going to get diagnosed. And so I had told myself, I'm going to give myself the weekend to feel all the feelings and be super angry and just, oh my God, I was so depressed, so depressed. And then on Monday, I was like, I'm going to put my big girl pants on and I'm still going to be sad and I'm still going to feel the feelings, but I'm going to start doing things. And so immediately on Monday, I started the Walls protocol. And on Monday, I started reaching out to all of my colleagues, all my people. I think that is one of the benefits of being in this world is I knew who to contact. I knew a colleague who has MS and he treats a lot of MS. And so he was the first person I contacted. He's one of my main doctors right now. I reached out to another colleague who also I knew was seeing MS and, got on her books immediately. And so, yeah, I found it took a while to do a lot of the digging and, I did thousands of dollars of labs. But for me, that was really important. And so I guess I'll go back because I feel like a big part of the grief too is my husband and I were planning on starting to try for a family the month that I got diagnosed. And so I think I actually had more grief around that versus the actual diagnosis. It was more like the implications. And my neurologist was literally like, go home and make babies. And like literally that's what he told us, like on the way out.
Mine told me to wait another few years. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
very interesting. And I think because he actually did not recommend me going on medications right away. And so he basically his thought process was go home, have your children, and then as soon as you stop reproducing, essentially, we're going to put you on meds. And we basically walked out, and I was like, I hope I never see you again. And he was like, I hope I never see you again too. Literally, that's what he said, because I was diagnosed with CIS, and so there's no, specifically with standard of care, there's no follow-up. And so he basically was like, unless you have a major flare, don't come back. And so we literally walked out, and I was like, I hope I never see you again. And he was like, I hope I never see you again too. And so my goal, yes, we could have absolutely, continued with our family planning, but for us, that did not feel right. I think with my clinical knowledge in chronic illness and, way genetics and epigenetics work, that just did not sit well with us. And so we told ourselves we're going to give ourselves at least a year to get both of us in like the best health possible, to set up our kids for success, because my mother-in-law has MS and now I have MS. And so for us, it was like, we have to get to some answers. So I did tons of serum lab testing, like standard lab testing, but then I did a lot of functional medicine testing. So I did a Lyme panel, which I tested positive for Bartonella and Babesia and Mycoplasma. And so I believe that was actually what really triggered a lot of my symptoms.
Your symptoms were numbness, right?
Yeah. So my main symptoms were right leg numbness, some swallowing issues, and then extreme fatigue. Fatigue was really the most like debilitating. My foot was kind of like, honestly, like didn't really care about my foot because it didn't stop me from working out. I wasn't having like a lot of coordination issues until like late last year. But the fatigue was awful because I was still seeing patients full time. And it was very challenging. But as soon as I started my Lyme protocols, everything got better. Like literally within a month, everything got better. Not 100% better, but significantly better. But I also did mycotoxin testing, so mold testing, which I also had very, very high levels of mold. I have a past history of mold, and I hear this a lot from other MS people of mold exposure. I think mold is incredibly damaging, and there's a lot of misinformation around mold. But we know that it attacks the central nervous system. And so I think that also drove disease. And then I'm at the Center for New Medicine in Irvine, California, and they do a lot of more like bioenergetic testing, but also like stool testing and things like that. So through them, learned I had really, really high parasites and really bad yeast. And so that's really what I've been targeting the last 6-ish months is yeast, parasites, some like heavy metal type stuff. I know through genetic testing that I'm a very, very bad detoxer, like very bad detoxer. And so I think all of that kind of combined just set my body up for disease. And then,
it's so interesting how you did all this testing in such a short period of time. I feel like, first of all, I'm not in the medical field, so I had to learn what all these different type of testings are before I said yes,
totally,
based on the budget and everything. And it's so good to hear what helped and what didn't help for you. And yes, mold is huge. But it's also interesting how, because your background, you approach this whole diagnosis completely differently than I did. My doctor told me, no, you have to get on medication, no kids. And I walked out, I'm like, no, I'm having kids.
Yeah.
And that's what I did. Like, different mindset, different mind.
And I think intuition too, right?
Yes.
I think intuition makes a huge difference. And for both my husband and I, we looked at each other and we were like, it just doesn't feel right. Like it just, like we have time. I think that was like the good thing is like we're not older, and so we had time, even though we feel like we wish we would have had children multiple years ago. We just know that's like not part of our journey, and intuitively we were like, we need to pause the brakes. We need to stop, do some things. I think also trauma and emotional health also played a huge. Are you there?
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry.
Okay. No, that's okay. I think trauma and like emotional well-being also plays a huge impact on chronic
Yeah,
disease development. And for me, I know that was a huge piece, and that's also something that I have been addressing literally from like the first week, through lots of different types of therapies. And I think that has gotten me really far in that I wasn't stuck in that like depressed, cannot do anything state, because I was able to like move past it through some of the work, which then allowed me to do other therapies and just have like more peace in life in
yeah,
general, which is amazing.
for sure. And that's what I'm trying to do, bring more hope and happiness and positivity to this illness, because yes, the past trauma is obviously linked to the diagnosis, but even after moving forward, it's so important to have that shift in the mindset and like realize maybe that's what caused where I am now, and just try to change it moving forward. But it's so hard, like it's everybody has to change their own, everything, lifestyle around them before they can accept this truth,
For
basically.
sure. And I think it's taking it one step at a time. Some people, I think, like for me, I'm like an all or nothing person. So I literally was like, everything is going to change overnight. And it essentially did. Like literally that Monday after I got diagnosed, I was like, my mindset is different. My lifestyle is different. What I'm eating is
I'm a
different. How I'm,
new.
yeah, like literally it was like flip the tables, like let's go. And then other people, and I see this in my practice too, like you have to meet people where they're at, and some
Yes.
people need very very small changes, but I also think consistency is key. I think, I see it in my practice and I hear it from other people, like dabbling here and there. And this is what I think really led to my mother-in-law's extreme debilitation, is she dabbled in a lot of things, but she was never consistent with anything, and she's not doing well. And so that also has been an extreme one, very challenging for both my husband and I, mentally, emotionally, to see somebody with the same disease decline a lot. But it's also been a huge motivator of like, we will not let ourselves get there, and we're going to take the natural approach. But if we then need to get on medication, we're willing to do it if the time comes, because we know, the impacts, and those changes or those decisions will always be changing.
I, I thought you were on Ocrevus.
Say
I,
that again.
I thought you were on Ocrevus.
I'm not. No, I've
Oh,
never taken
yeah.
any medication.
Oh, I don't know why I thought I. Okay.
No, nope. I've never been on any medication, and I don't plan on it. Honestly, and my neurologist actually did not recommend any medication. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I was also diagnosed with CIS by the first doctor, and 2 weeks later, no new MRIs. The second doctor told me I have relapsing remitting MS.
Hmm.
So I'm still like, I don't think I have MS, sometimes.
Yeah.
But it's also in my mind that I do. So
Yeah, for sure. And I think for me, someone that I have met many people sharing on Instagram and sharing both locally here as well in San Diego. I have shared my story, and I've met many, many people who have reversed their disease, and not just no symptoms, but lesions gone. And so I had met somebody very early on in my journey, and a recommendation she gave to me was surround yourself with people who believe that that's possible and don't listen to the other people. And again, that may sound very naive to some people, but that has worked really well for me. And so when I first got diagnosed, I was on all the like natural MS Facebook groups, and they were so stressful for me. And So I immediately unfollowed. I was like, I'm out of here. This is like really stressing me out. And so I've just surrounded myself by people who believe in it, who have hope, that are going to encourage me to keep going. And I also do my own research. So I'm not just like living in this like la la land. Like I know the realities, and I believe that it's possible. And our body knows, like our mind and body are so connected. And I think that's powerful as well.
I think that's
I saw somebody say,
what brought us
same
together.
here.
I feel like the universe, that's what brought us together, because
Yes.
I believe in the exact same thing. And I remember when you reached out to me about the book, I did the same thing. I surrounded myself with people who sharing an optimistic, positive story, and they truly believe that healing is possible. And that's the book. And you were asking me if it's published yet. So yeah, it's nothing happens by accident, you know.
Definitely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Mm.
Awesome. I'm curious, in terms of therapies that you're currently doing, what are you currently doing right now?
Therapies, I don't really do. What do you mean therapies? Like
Like in
red
terms
light
of
therapy,
support. No, like support.
support?
Yeah, in terms of like diet, lifestyle, supplements, like are you doing any HBOT or anything like that?
Yes, all
Yeah.
of those. I'm doing supplements. I actually met my new neurologist 2 weeks ago, and we just did, we are checking some biomarkers because I just met somebody, a doctor who has MS, and she reversed her symptoms and her lesion disappeared. So she's gonna check my biomarkers, and it looks like we're gonna be working together.
Amazing.
So stay tuned, because we have some, she's working on a really interesting course that she's gonna launch. So I have my functional medicine doctor, no, functional neurologist, and I no longer have my functional medicine doctor because I felt like it's just too much, you know, like I'm doing good, I'm feeling great. It took me a
Yeah.
while.
Yeah.
You feeling better already within a year? That's amazing. For me, first of all, I became pregnant like a month later, and then I became pregnant again. So 2 pregnancies didn't really help with my symptoms to completely disappear. And hormones, that's another story. I can talk about all day. It's
Yeah.
and there's a reason why your doctor said that after you give birth, you might have a relapse, because it's so common. And I know why, because I've been a mom, and those
Yeah.
months after you give birth is just it's so bad on your body. Like you can't sleep, you can't eat, you can't focus on anything but the baby. So it's I don't know how I did it. um,
Really.
but that period is over, so now I can focus on myself, making sure I eat healthy, I work out, and just physical, like mental and physical activity. And mental when it comes to quieting the mind, you know, like
Yeah.
doing meditation and all those things. That's when I feel more healed than ever. So yeah, it took me like 2 3 years to kind of start feeling normal again, how I
Yeah.
felt like prior my diagnosis, like 10 years ago, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah. That's awesome. And I think it speaks to like seasons, right? Like there are certain seasons where you're doing a lot, and then there are other seasons where you're feeling really good and you don't have to do a lot, which is awesome.
and not only that, sometimes you feel so good you forget that you have to do all those things. So
Yeah.
once you find these signals, you have to tune in. There's no cheat days, like Matt Embry says. And if you do that, if you have cheat days, it's such a good reminder. Like your body tells you, like that's it. Like you have to go back and start over again.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, and I think too, when you're treating it from a root cause, hopefully on the opposite side of things, you don't have to be 200% all the time. And that's what I hear from a lot of the people that have their lesions are completely gone. They're not on the Walls protocol anymore. They're not doing all of the therapies all the time, and they feel amazing. And so that gives me hope for
I'm
sure.
still on the WAS
I
protocol.
am still on the Walls protocol. Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
switched to autoimmune protocol, and I'm still it was just too hard for me to do what was supposed. But everybody is
Yeah.
different. You need different
Yeah, I'm doing
ingredients.
the walls plus I added back in eggs. So I did that like 3 months in because I was losing so much weight. And my doctors were like, "This, we can't do this. Like, you have to add back in eggs." And I handled it just fine. And I just get the highest quality eggs that I can get locally. And I feel good on it. Yeah, and I do basically no grains, very, very little.
I want to
Yeah.
ask you something because you are a pediatrician. So I was 1 month, I got diagnosed and I became pregnant 1 month later.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I switched my diet. I stopped eating gluten, dairy. And because I had to relearn everything, I was very limited what I'm eating because I was scared of everything. You
Yeah,
know, like
for sure.
once after the diagnosis is like, is it good? Is it bad? Like you just stop eating.
Yeah.
And it was during pregnancy, and I can tell that my son is very picky eater. Do you think there is a correlation between these
I
two?
see it in practice. There can be a correlation. I think sometimes we have to be really cautious, right? Of like not to blame ourselves because there's also parents in my practice who ate like the best, most diverse diet and their child is still picky, right? And so I think, but we do know that the taste buds and what mom is exposed to is passed. So I think there is some level of correlation, and that can be changed, right? I think that's the good thing is taste buds can change with children. And I see that all the time. I see a lot of very, very picky children. And then we work on some different techniques. They see a feeding therapist, and then all of a sudden they're eating like everything or most foods. So those taste buds can
Is
change.
that age 4 a difficult age when, what age
When they're more
are they going
picky,
to start being more open to try new things?
usually somewhere between 4 and 6 is when I see usually they're kind of like coming out of the more picky phase. Um, but it kind of depends on like environment, right? And what they're being exposed to as well. And is there like very healthy modeling? But in those cases, if there is very good modeling and, they're being exposed to lots of different foods, usually somewhere between 4 and 6 is usually when I see kind of like the uptick in, they're wanting to try different things and they're a little less aversion to all the things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be too personal, but do you have any fear when it comes to having kids in the future, them having MS? I know you probably did more research than me on this.
Yeah. Yeah,